Alright, this is okay here. The purpose of this stream is to catch up a match between Bugzilla and burpcow, which happened at 5 a.m. Icelandic time, or UTC. But before we do that, we're just going to have while people are joining us, we're just going to have a quick look at a couple of games between blitzbullet and zyxon. Um, so let's actually look at this. This is a game. First, I'll look at a game that zyxon actually lost. But he just made an annotation about his attack in this game, so I just want to quickly share it with you. Now this is a very solid setup. If your opponent ever goes b6, setting up your bishops on d3 and e3, putting your queen on e2, and your pawns on f3 and e4 is a really good barricade against that long diagonal. White only has one potentially lethal piece, and that's that light squared bishop. So this should be very good for white. If I were to turn on the engine here, oh, the engine quite likes black, surprisingly. Okay, but it looks very solid anyway, regardless of what the engine likes. Castles, king in the corner. I mean, at h3 was never a threat, but I guess he's afraid of this diagonal opening up at some point. Black likewise, bishop g5. Ooh, he even gets the pin, which looks nasty. So he's picking up a piece for a pawn. It's usually a bad idea to defend by trying to swap off pieces in this way. So by defend, you can't sort of swap off attackers in the same way as you can in standard chess. So the thing here is, having said that, so if takes, you could replace your bishop here. Takes, queen takes, maybe a bit stronger. Okay, this is played. Hi there, Marlon. Marlon says, yes, you can swap off attackers, it all depends. But usually not like for like. I mean, as I said, it all depends, yes. If this was defended by another bishop, then yeah, so defended by the queen maybe looks a bit more promising than if it were defended purely by the rook. So otherwise takes, bishop here, it feels like white's made some progress. So that's why this seems like a suspicious defense. But yeah. Having said that, you can just go bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, so maybe it is okay after all. Yeah, so knight at g4 came, this came. My purpose here is just to quickly show you some comments by zyxon on his own game. So queen f8, really securing things. Knight e4, lots of pressure on the f6 pawn here, but not quite enough to break through. So the point of this is only to take, thinking of taking once. No, it doesn't quite work, does it? So if black does nothing, if black doesn't, you want to somehow distract the bishop and get in on h6, but you haven't quite got enough. But for safety, black takes, e5, d takes e5, f takes e5, and this. Okay, so he's giving up the piece, and this is the point where zyxon was saying he was wishing he had played bishop takes g7, queen takes g7, and then gone for at h6. And this is stronger than what happened in the game, going for at h6 first, which you'd think the move order is not so important. The problem here is takes is possible, and then knight at h5 defending this square. That would be one way of defending. And of course, if you defend with the knight, then giving away the knight is not nearly so dangerous as giving away diagonals for black in this position. But this takes, and white should still be in good shape here. Takes, knight at h5. And here zyxon writes, and here we come to the reason I added this game to the study. Here I try for an offensive move, knight at g5, thinking I could survive knight at g5, thinking I could survive knight at g3 and then counter. However, this is a bad mistake. Defending the g3 square is the proper move for white. We talk a lot about offensive tactics and mating patterns in Crazyhouse, but good defense wins a lot of games. So he wishes he'd defended the g3 square, for example, with a move like bishop at e1. So knight at g5 was played instead, and now he says, now at this point blitzbullet won quite easily. So knight g3 came, takes, sidestep, takes the rook with check, bishop here check, steps down, check, and rook takes knight, and black is very safe. So proper counter. So if black had gone on the defensive in this position, then of course with the move, say, obviously this is just straight away getting mated, so you can't do anything like that. If you try and do this, so that well, f7 is still a problem, so you have to somehow defend f7. But the point is that yeah, so if you try and go on the defense, white is very happy and white is probably winning. But the problem is black blitzbullet went straight on the attack. Hi there, Marlon says, my voice sounds deeper. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I haven't drunk enough. And the other position, which was a really beautiful position from the match, so really the purpose of this stream is to cover Bugzilla versus burpcow, but this is just quick highlights as people are joining us. The other beautiful game was a game that zyxon was completely winning, but blitzbullet fought back, and with this move, well, he was threatening pawn at c7 and a rook on the back rank. And zyxon played bishop at c5, pawn at c7 came, and blitzbullet didn't realize that bishop at c5 was actually a sneaky mate threat. And knight takes f2. So the point is, of course, you can't sidestep because double check here, queen or rook, and it's a smothered mate. So you have to take this knight. And the key move is this one. Black to play and win. This bishop can be brought alive with black's next move. So I wonder if anyone can see it. But probably a lot of you guys saw this match live, whereas what we're going to be turning to next is a match which almost no one saw live because it was at 5 AM in the morning between Bugzilla and burpcow. So Chemical Chess says rook g1 maybe. Indeed, rook g1. It has to be the rook. You draw the king to g1, and now the king is in danger. And now one's first instinct might be bishop takes rook, draw the king out, and the king can't go back into the corner because queen here is checkmate, so you draw the king out. But no, you don't take the rook. There's something stronger. And this is very instructive. The back rank is weak. So what's the next move? So take e3 is that kind of thing is exactly would be people's first thoughts in this position. But hopefully after this stream, something else would occur to you first. So whenever you see a back rank weak and a diagonal and a queen in hand, then in future you're going to think of something else. And we're going to come back to this towards the end of the stream, another example of this kind of pattern. So you don't take immediately, you have a better approach. So anyone else in the chat want to pipe in? Chemical Chess has got it now, absolutely. Queen e1, and whether you move the rook, whether you put a rook here or whatever you put here, so obviously it's rook at f1. Bishop takes f1, can't take back because it's pinned, step back, and you just want a rook there. So rook here, takes, and takes. Now that is a really, just going back to that initial position, there's no back rank weakness in this initial position. So, but this position, there's a back rank weakness, and the queen controls, so you don't take it back immediately, you control the square, then take back, and then back rank mate. So this is a really important pattern. We'll see this, an example of this even came up in the game Bugzilla burpcow, and burpcow didn't take his chance. It was not necessarily a straightforward example, but we'll see another example of this theme coming up. So it's a really important theme that even, as we saw here, blitzbullet, one of the top players in the game, missed it, although it's in a complicated form, and burpcow missed it in the match we're about to look at. Okay, so hopefully enough people have joined us. We can get going on this match. So Bugzilla burpcow. Bugzilla is white in game 1, both strong players, and he just goes for e4, e5, d5. Of course, in these sorts of positions in Crazyhouse, black is often very happy to give the knight away for the pawn because he'll get 2 active bishops, he'll get a pawn in hand which he'll be looking to drop on h3, and he'll have a very safe king with a nice setup of 4 pawns around his castled kingside. But of course white does not take. In fact, Bugzilla plays the clearcast system, and the clearcast, so not the clearcast system, the finisher system. The finisher system is not developing your knights, the finish system, i.e. opening theory, not developing your knights, waiting. Waiting. Oh, he does develop his knights. Okay, so I'm thinking of a future game. So I'm thinking of the future game, waiting for black to put his knight here and then playing f3. But in this game, this happened, and the knight came here. So we have effectively an advanced French. After e6, we have an advanced French. As usual, this is a bad bishop trap behind the pawn, but it's doing a good job. It's keeping the queen side safe. Castles, takes, and replace. Obviously, this is a slight weakness in white's position. Nothing too serious. Queen e1 defends everything. Keeps an eye on f2. Keeps an eye on c3. Knight e7, takes, and now the threat is takes and win a pawn, but it's not such a great pawn to win because black will get some counterplay along this diagonal with the tempo on the queen that black defends, fair enough. And black slowly developing. Notice black still not castled. Okay, so black deciding to so why does he do this? I guess there's a lot of pressure on here, and he could have maybe defended. What's wrong with defending? If you just try and defend, the problem is takes, and bishop here is the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. So that's a bit of a problem. So black is facing some real trouble, so he has to go on a counterattack. So he does this, takes, pawn here, trying to get the piece back. Unfortunately for black, white's just played a perfect game here. He's threatening this, picking up a queen. Decides to do it with the queen because forcing the trade of queens. And pawn here, and this is an utter crush. Black resigned. Igloo Kid says, does Bugzilla refer to Bughouse? Because Bugzilla is also the name of a bug tracking software developed by Mozilla. Yes. So Bugzilla is a very old name in the Bughouse community. He's been playing for a long, long time, as long as Jan Lee. And he's a Bughouse player. So really wonderful crushing win from, not quite sure what burpcow even did wrong that game. So Chemical Chess has a comment on this. He says, e4, knight f6, knight c3, d5, e takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, queen takes d5, knight e3, this sort of position. What are the continuations? Okay, so the boring continuation is just put your queen back on d8, and the reason for that is because the queen in the open board is a powerful piece, but it can be hit with tempo, so white can put pieces on with tempo. The other move sometimes is put the queen into the corner to try and stop white, to delay the push of the d pawn. And again, the queen in the corner is just harder to attack. So those are two natural approaches. You want to be aware, you don't want to put the queen on squares where, like, if you put your queen here, that would be terrible, because white just develops pieces attacking your queen. Your queen will just be running around the board like a headless chicken. So here is normal, and here sometimes once this knight's come out, so you can, from here you can swing back across the queen side, king side, once the knight has come out. And the other thing is just always be happy to give away the queen for a piece if you get some weaknesses or compensation. That's the approach. So if I look at the opening explorer among top players, queen d8 is the most popular with 2,500 games, and queen a5 has 800 games, and queen d6 has 100 games. So those are the three most popular in this sort of position. Okay, so on to game 2. Bugzilla is black, and he's playing what's sometimes called the wolf defense after the lone wolf. What I used to, before I knew the lone wolf, I called this the Russian defense, because every Russian school kid plays it. It's a way of making sure your f7 square is safe, which is a concern in Crazyhouse. Now, just to be strictly like this opening was played a lot in this series. Strictly speaking, the engine prefers taking here and looking for pawn h6 at some point for white, but this closes up the position a little, and I'm not going to go deep into opening analysis, so I'll just go straight on. Black looking a bit uncomfortable here because the knight had nowhere to go, and now that becomes a weakness. So takes, takes, knight lands here, takes, takes, bishop here. So pretty uncomfortable position for black here. So having said that, so this seems to have been a success. Defending nicely. Hi there, Zaraza. And this was maybe an opportunity for black to get back into it. This move is not the best because you can just take the bishop, and if he takes your queen, take back. And a queen for 2 pieces is a fair exchange. And also, if you just look at this position, black's pieces are quite nicely lined up to start a good attack, whereas white is not really quite ready yet and only has a queen in hand. So black has 4 pieces in pocket, and white only has a queen. So this is actually very promising for black. Despite slight weakness here, white doesn't have any pieces to exploit it. So a real mischance from Bugzilla here. Instead, he moved the queen and takes, takes, bishop here. The queen is looking very uncomfortable. I mean, you could go here, but it's just takes, takes, and he did go queen h6. Just to explain, why doesn't he take the free pawn? He doesn't take the free pawn because otherwise the bishop lands here, and you can't go anywhere that holds on to this pawn. So you have to run away somehow, and then this comes. And h6, at h6 comes next, and if black tries to go at h6, that's really bad, because takes, and bishop takes h6, and you can't even take back, because this is checkmate. So this is just how fast white's counterattack is coming. And that's why takes is not a good idea. Queen h6, not much better, but a little bit better. Notice the knight is guarded by the queen, obviously. Nice double attack on, well, for a trade on the rook, or, well, hang on a second. It's not really an attack because the knight's guarding both of these key weak squares, and the rook would just be a standard trade. So doesn't perform that much. Knight at d4, bishop at g4. So white is very safe, very secure. b3, hitting that bishop. Bishop at b2. So he's provoked a little weakness with this move. Knight e4. It's actually a very nice move, this knight e4, because notice both knights are hitting f6. Pretty uncomfortable. For black, bishop takes b3 wasn't the best, but even a bishop takes d5, which looks promising, white can just go f6 straight away. This is very uncomfortable. Obviously, you can't take back because knight takes and pawn at g7 is a mating pattern. So this happened, at c2 happened. White even sacks the queen just to get something on f6. Goes for a bishop first, and he's probably hoping to take and then drop a knight on f6 next. But actually he just goes for the free pawn on g5, that's even better. And at this point, black decides to give up the queen. You might think, well, why not back off here? And that doesn't work at all, because knight e7 here and pawn here is checkmate, so that's no good. And queen h7 doesn't work, because then knight at f6 is picking up the queen, whether you like it or not. You could take it again, but then another knight is coming. So you're losing that queen, and a very nice. So you might ask how to take back this knight. It's nice to take it back with the h knight, because then when you take the queen, and of course you can't take it back because at g3, queen at h5 is just lights out. With yeah, there's no defense. If you try and I'm just trying to think, how would you defend? Something like knight at h6 to try and block that file, you just take it. Okay, so white's just taking everything. So, yeah, bishop at f6. Hi there, Baku's, wonderful to see you. So he took on g5. Bugzilla sacks the queen, it's not going to help much. Tries to defend. He's going to have to give up the queen. In fact, he's not going to give up the queen, he's just going to get mated. Because rook takes knight, queen here is checkmate, and king takes is also mated in a second. Takes and takes. Takes, takes. If you step back, queen here is mate. If you step up, queen here is also mate. So a real crush from burpcow, and 1-all in this series. Game 3. It worked well in game 1, so Bugzilla repeats. And here burpcow goes for the very early knight e4, and it's this game that Bugzilla went for f3. And the knight doesn't really have a home yet. Has nowhere to go to, so the usual move is d5. And okay, you can lose the knight for the pawn, but the pawn on e4 is in your opponent's half of the board and can be quite annoying. It stops this knight developing. So d5 comes. Of course, you could take en passant, but then the knight gets freedom. Okay, so the bishop came out. Bishop f5. Takes, takes. Knight at g3 hitting the bishop. Drop the bishop back. Knight c3, so notice there's a lot of pressure on this pawn. And black just ignores the pressure on the pawn. He has to develop. Is there anything he could do to hold on to the pawn? He could try and do this, I guess. So that might be an approach. But apparently this is supposed to be good for white. Also, you can see f6 is really weak. But I guess f6 is going to be weak anyway, so for some reason the engine doesn't mind this. Oh, okay, I missed this move. At h4, okay. That's a sneaky little move. So takes, takes, and knight at f6, he has to go straight. He doesn't want, if he moves this knight, this one's falling, so he has to go straight for the counterattack. Takes, takes, and black gives up the queen, but black's getting a lot. Yeah, so black's getting quite a lot of material. But white is better here. Now, this is sensitive, but not an immediate mate threat. What would be tempting is if we had a knight in hand, then knight here takes, queen here would be mate. But we don't have a knight in hand. We've only got pawns and a queen. Still, if we're not getting mated, pawn at g7 is quite nice. Instead, this was played. And I hadn't really analysed this, but apparently here, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop f2, king e2, knight at d5, just giving some extra coverage against that mate. And the idea is, if you dare to take this bishop, we then go knight at c4. And so in this kind of position, apparently, black is not doing so badly. In fact, that's fun. He gets a draw. So that's a fun little line I hadn't quite seen when I'd actually analysed it. Pretty fun. But instead, he does this, which, again, it looks like a good move, both defending and eyeing this weak square. And I think here, the move he does is good. No, the move he does, there are two good, really good moves in this position. And they are at e7 and at g7. At g7 is strong. I think at g7 is really strong because if you try and counterattack, just takes, sidestep, check, run away. That's whether you like it or not. So so you've saved one of those pieces, and then now you're going to save the other one. So you might hope to do something like this. The problem is with a pawn, a knight, and a queen in hand, this king is in jeopardy, as follows. Pawn here, check. If you dare to take it, then the knight is coming in, the queen is coming in, and we still have another knight in hand. So knight here, check. Queen takes, do taking here first, and then taking here, checkmate. And of course, going here is no better because you just go queen takes pawn, check. And if you go here, there's a pawn and takes, so you could go here. And then the knight at a6 comes, and queen takes pawn, checkmate. So that's why you sidestep. But if you sidestep, there's a very nasty move white has, which is simply to defend that pawn. And you're threatening two moves. Queen at e8, checkmate. But also, trying to think, why is... Okay, so just the problem with that is, yeah, that just doesn't work because of takes. So it's not really two squares, it's just that one square. At e8 checkmate, and it's very hard to defend. If you just try and take like this, yeah, that doesn't work because queen, bishop takes, and again, e8 is undefended. So yeah, there's no way of keeping an eye on e8. That's the problem. So all of that is just to say that you can try and counterattack for a bit, but at d7 is eventually going to be a problem. So at g7 is a good move. Another good approach is at d7. No, not at d. At d7 was what was played in the game. At e7. So apparently at e7 is not quite as good because takes at f2, king e2, and there isn't an immediate mate threat here. And black actually has time to just take here and threatening to go knight at g3. So, for example, knight at g3, bishop here defending, and the game goes on. So, sorry, there are two good moves in this position. One of them is at g7, and the other one is actually queen at b7. So obviously you're threatening to get in on the back rank, so black has to defend, and then you go at e7, and this is really strong. So the point is, in this position, you're threatening a mating attack if black does nothing. If black does quiet moves like takes a pawn, you're threatening mate. King takes here, queen takes. So this is an example. So if you try and block, then yeah, you can't block in this position because, yeah, if you did something like bishop at d7 here, the problem is bishop at d6 comes and queen takes rook comes next. So, for example, if this, you've got him on the back rank, and we've now got a back rank mate. So pawn here, king here, and rook here will be mate. So there are other, so probably black's best defense is actually just to very quietly step back, but white is doing incredibly well indeed. So all of this is to say that white needs a fast attack in this position, and at d7, which is played, doesn't quite do it. It looks promising, but doesn't quite do it, as we'll see. Well, firstly, this square is defended, so it takes, check, and black can simply block with a pawn either here or here, and white has no continuation because the knight check is covered. But but unfortunately he blocked with a knight, and now Bugzilla actually does have mate with queen takes knight. And however you take it back, if you block, you're opening up a knight check because it'll be pinned. But if you take it back, you just open up this square. So taking doesn't work because you just it'll be knight t5. We saw this pattern already with another knight in hand. So queen here, king here, and knight in hand here, 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 and here. So we saw that already. If you take with the king, it prolongs the mate a little, but the idea is, you just do this first, then this knight here check, and he might try and run out, but he doesn't last long. Just always keeping the king from running back, and a couple of pawns are going to mate. Okay, so queen takes d5 is very strong. You can't take this way. Taking this way isn't any better, because then pawn at c6, and then the knight check, and you're soon getting mate. Queen takes rook, and you can even sack this and just mate with the knight and rook. And yeah, that's all there is to it. Obviously, if you step back here, then here as well. Sorry, new knight at b7, king c8, and queen c8 takes, queen e8 takes here is a nice little pattern. Okay, so all of that to say is that queen takes knight is really strong in this position. It wasn't played immediately. First at e7, bishop here check for knight d2, and black would still be doing fine if say we continued like so, and maybe, I don't know, bishop at e7, clearing away some of these attackers, and maybe there's no mate threat, so we can go for something like this, threatening knight at g3. So maybe a slight edge to black, but instead black played this, and Bugzilla was goaded into playing. Well, actually here, queen takes knight is just, again, completely crushing. If you take it with the c-pawn, knight here check, queen here, and pawn here is mate, because this square is covered. If you take it with the e-pawn, then the same thing is even easier, because the king is blocked from running here. And if you just run with the king, that's actually the best defense, is just to run with the king, but it only delays the mate a little bit. A neat little move, you drop the queen here, and you're eyeing this square here. Blocks, promote, and queen here is checkmate. So queen takes knight was even better, but Bugzilla plays one more move before he finds the winning move of this game, the whole game, which is queen takes knight, and now he delivers mate very easily, exactly as we saw. So he finds the winning idea, but it took a few goes before he gets it. So game 4. Bugzilla is white. He's going to play the wolf defense again. Let's see if he can do better than last time. Strangely, burpcow doesn't go for this, which worked so well for him last time. Oh, it's not so strange, because he's put his bishop on d3, which looks different from last time. So that's why things are slightly different. c6 is played. Bishop a4, castles. a3, hitting that knight. Knight takes e4. Okay, so very aggressive. He's trying to pick up a couple of pawns. So the idea is if you take this knight, he's hoping to go takes and takes, and then maybe take here. I'm not sure. So if takes here, takes, and takes here is decent. There might be better moves first, like you could do this and then takes. So that's the idea. And if you take the knight, which is what happened in the game, then this pawn goes. So the idea is to try and clear away white center. So it's quite a creative way, clearing away white center. like so. So I think I'll look later. There's another. It's interesting if you should go pawn takes rather than knight takes. I think pawn takes. No, not in this position. So we'll see this in another game. Sometimes pawn takes is better. Sometimes knight takes. So this knight takes c4. Okay, so here the engine wants to just take on here and begin the attack. And the reason is this knight is eyeing f6 and this bishop is eyeing h6. And although f6 is very well defended, maybe this is one idea, but maybe black's doing okay, giving up a bit too much. So c4, knight f6, takes, takes. Well, black looks comfortable here. So bishop guarding g7. So h6 is not too much of a threat. White doesn't even have a pawn for h6. So for now, looking very comfortable for black. At g6, really making things very secure. So if I just go all the way back here, the engine, however, really wants to just stop messing about and get on the attack. And so it's not entirely happy with how Bugzilla is playing this so defensively. So we'll maybe see why as the game goes on. d5, so a little bit of a weakness on d6, and burpcow immediately puts his bishop there. Looks tasty. Bishop g4, h3. Okay, so already here actually, white had a very beautiful idea. He only has a knight in hand, and the very beautiful idea is knight e7. You don't want to give up your queen for a knight. Grab this pawn, and however you take it, pawn at e7. And if you move the queen, you're taking the rook and you're taking the other rook for your bishop. And already this is really not very good. You're not even taking back this bishop. Okay, so if you did, yeah, so actually probably the best move here is just to give up your queen, straight up. And white is crushing in this position. So a little sneaky idea that burpcow missed. h3 though tries to stay solid. Takes, takes, knight at d4. And so black regaining some control, harassing that queen. A neat little idea, because obviously you can't take back this bishop or you lose your knight. So a neat little idea to check and then take back the bishop. And then he takes back the bishop. But a very nice move here found by burpcow, giving up the queen for 2 pieces. Black has 2 aggressive pieces in burpcow's half of the board, and they're both eliminated with this beautiful queen sack. And yeah, so this is trying to get back control of this long diagonal. Not sure. Yeah, takes, takes, replace. So let's see, what else could you do in this position? I guess the problem with doing a move like this is that would effectively be a draw offer. And maybe white's hoping for better. Hi there, Zaraza. Interesting development of the party. So instead he takes like this. So white is going for an advantage by playing this. Bishop at g3, bishop here, logical. Knight at g4. So it's a good defensive move as well as a good attacking move, this knight at g4. So it's keeping an eye on h2. And so if ever you take here, takes back. Okay, g3 might be weak, but h2 is secure. Queen at d2, good move. Bishop defending the bishop. Takes, takes. e4, blocking that diagonal. Bishop at f4. So bishop at e3, defending the queen. And in this position, maybe white makes... Oops. Yeah, white missed a little opportunity for attack with knight at h6. And the idea is, if you sidestep, then the next move is knight at d6. And I don't see why this is so threatening, because surely we can just defend this pawn. It's the next move. You take the bishop, and then taking the bishop opens up the rook. Okay, so this is This is not an easy little tactic to see. It's knight at h6. We don't really want to take it. Taking it would basically kill us because he can take back anyway, and also f6 would be weak. So sidestepping the king is totally normal. Knight at d6 in pressure. Lots of pressure on f7, and black has no pieces in hand to defend, so he uses the queen. And then bishop takes bishop. You take back. Rook takes. And this is already forced mate for white, if you just follow this very natural line. Black doesn't have an immediate mate back, and this will be mating. With ideas of takes, drop a rook here, rook takes, and then drop a knight here with the smothered mate. Queen takes, knight takes, smothered mate. So that's the basic idea. So knight at h6, very powerful idea. Not taken in the game. Knight takes e3, d takes e3. And again, a critical move for white. Bishop at e1. This is such a subtle. This looks like such a decent move. You're defending g3. The queen is trapped. Wonderful. Isn't the queen trapped? It is. Well, we'll see how the game transpired. But we're going to come back to this in a second. Knight at f3 check. And the g-pawn is pinned. And of course the threat is knight takes bishop, which would be very annoying. So you have to take it. And now black could have gone queen takes g2, takes the rook with check. Maybe it's possible white's still doing okay, but it's quite double-edged. So yeah, maybe white is slightly better. But there is this play. Now, instead of bishop at e1, you have the same idea, but with bishop at c3. And suppose we try and do the same thing. Knight at f3. Now, of course, we're not even hitting a bishop here. So even king h1 might be possible. But black doesn't have anything after this, pawn takes, king takes, at e4, white can just step back, and black can't even do a move like take this bishop, because the bishop on c3 wasn't just attacking the queen, it was also attacking the black king. Smothered mate will come. If you sidestep this smothered mate, if you take it, you open up queen h8 or queen g7. So the same idea as in the game, but bishop at c3 would have been just a tiny bit better. But okay, what happened in the game was bishop at e1, knight at f3 check, takes, black takes back here, white takes the queen. So black really had to find queen takes g2 to stay in the game. And still white might be better, but takes here, takes the queen, takes here. The problem is, yeah, white doesn't have a pawn for g7, so he doesn't quite have mate yet. Knight h6, you could just take it. Knight f6, knight f6 is also guarded. Yeah, so no mate yet for white, but it's uncomfortable. This came. Bishop takes is natural, but apparently there's a killer move for white in this position, which is not to take back immediately, but simply to go knight at g4, and you think, surely, what's the problem? I can just defend with the bishop. A bishop on g5, bishop on g7. And that doesn't work, because then you can take with the bishop. So why is that so different? So the reason it's different is after takes, the problem is now that black can go knight at g4. So if you don't put your own knight on g4, black can go knight at g4. You have to take it, and then rook at h4. and defend yourself. So white is still winning this, just to be clear, but it was even more crushing to go knight at g4 here. But okay, bishop to h6, knight at g4 wasn't found, so bishop at e5 was played. And so white, as I said, should be crushing this, but has to find moves like knight at h5, knight at g4. Yeah, knight at g4, as before, are really strong. Yeah, this is actually really hard because it looks really dangerous. This bishop takes pawn, but the point is the black doesn't quite have enough. If you just go something like knight at g4, it turns out the white king is safe. But okay, he plays this, and now it's really double-edged. Rook at f2, brilliant move from Bugzilla. Knight at e3, defending. F takes g2. Knight takes g2. And now, actually, it's Bugzilla who has a killer blow as black. Okay, this is good. This is going to be difficult. If there's a top player in the chat, maybe they'll see it. But actually, there are lots of good moves for black, so I won't make it a puzzle. But the killer move for black, amazing move, is knight at e1. And the threat, of course, is rook takes knight and new knight on f2, checkmate. But the reason why this is such a killer blow is a very natural thing to do is just defend that knight with another knight. And this doesn't work because you just take the knight, and of course he has to take back. If he goes king here, knight here is checkmate. But now simply knight here check, cuts off this square, and another knight mates the king in the corner. So knight at e1 is a real killer move, and you can't take it because you just take back getting another knight. So really killer move here. What is this white rook is out of it. So Raza says, why not knight at f3? Yeah, you'll see. This is what happened in the game. So we'll get to that in a second. So probably white's best defense is queen at g1, but then you can just take, and you're just basically picking up the queen and threatening mate. And knight back to e1, threatening mate here, threatening mate here. You might defend, you simply take it, and then you go back to e1, threatening mate here and here. So this is how you kill your opponent, knight at e1. So why not knight at f3? This is what happened in the game. King goes back to h1, and if we had a rook in hand, then obviously this is the Arabian mate, rook on h2. And so the best continuation. So this is actually also good. Knight at f3 is okay, but you have to find rook takes g2 next. Very important. So you're threatening rook here checkmate. So the white has to take that rook, and then knight at e1. King f2, because there's a threat of a pawn check if you go to either of these two squares. Bring this bishop in check. Okay, so the thing about this is black is completely winning, but it's actually really dangerous because you're trying to defend g7 mate threat. You have to keep an eye on f6. You have to keep an eye on g7. You should be winning, but now, okay, watch out. You have to keep the checks. So something like rook e8 check, takes, bishop here check. So it's trying to deflect this and get safe. This would be one approach. That's if he takes this way. He opens up this diagonal. If he takes the other way, then you can do this and promote. If you can ever get him on the back rank, you can promote. So that's not good. But if ever you do that, there's rook at d2, and he can't stay up because rook takes pawn, king a4 and b5. Oh, and there's no future for that king. So knight f3 is good, but you have to keep the check and you have to hunt that king a bit. And I have some long lines in the study. I can post the study so for anyone who wants to watch synced up to the study as we're looking at it. I posted the link in the study. So it's really complicated. So this king e3 turns out to be right. If the king goes takes g2. Then there's an easier mate with rook at f2 takes, pawn here, check. Notice the queen is cutting off the dark squares. Pawn here, takes, king here, and bishop here, checkmate. So that's one nice idea. And if you step down, then it's very simple. That's just checkmate straight away. So it's a little bit of a king hunt you need. And maybe there's no direct mate, but just getting safe like this in some lines. Whereas knight at e1 is just a forcing mate in this position. But okay, knight f3 was played, king here, and now a really bad mistake from Bugzilla because he lets go of control of the f6 square. Knight at g4, brilliant move from white. You see, white at g4, so obviously what he wanted was queen takes h3, queen takes h2, checkmate. So it's like a one-move threat. And when both sides have, when burpcow has 5 seconds and Bugzilla 20 seconds, this is a decent idea. The problem is, knight at g4 is the move that white should be playing anyway in this position, targeting these two dark squares and defending. So knight at g4, brilliant move. f5, just desperate to try and get back control of f6. Takes the bishop, takes g4, but already it's all over. Bishop at e6, trying to deflect the queen so you can mate it, make the king, and he's losing the queen, and it's all over. A little bit of a king hunt, but it's all over. And burpcow takes it. And that was game 4. So Bugzilla's... So knight f3 wasn't the losing move, but knight at e1 was definitely the move from which burpcow couldn't have come back this game. Because basically it forces queen at g1 and you're taking all the pieces. Queen at g1, suddenly white has no mate threats. Okay, let's look at game 5. Bugzilla is white again, and he's been doing well with e4, so he continues. And it's burpcow who switches it up with the Scandi. Queen takes, and Bugzilla gambits a pawn. Just gambits that d pawn. It looks like a mistake, to be frank, but it's intentional. Bishop e3, trying to get fast development. Obviously, if you take the queen, you're giving white the open file, so that would be a bad idea. So the queen just sidesteps. Bishop b5, and I was just very interested, like, what do people play in this position? Apparently people do play bishop b5 in this position, and the second most common move is knight f3. So a little bit of an opening digression here. Why can't black just grab b2? This is a kind of classic mistake in standard chess as well. Looks promising, but knight b5 would come, and it's very hard to defend. Queen b4 and here might defend, and this is actually a move that's been played several times, but only by one player on Lichess, and that player is Matza. So actually going back here, just out of interest, how do you defend this pawn? It's kind of hard. I can imagine, yeah, you can't even do this because the d file is, yeah, this is actually really difficult to defend this pawn. So this is a quite a creative way. Queen here, check, and the point is you can't do bishop here because otherwise, yeah, why can't you do bishop d2? Bishop d2. Apparently, yeah, that seems to be good for white. Just bishop d2 would be a straightforward approach. Apparently black's best move is just queen d6 and give up the queen for the piece. So this is already really bad. But even if you just go pawn here, queen here, this is the move that Matza's found at b6. And if you take it with the pawn, knight takes is coming. So if I just look at the games with Matza, yes, however you take it, knight here, the problem is it's not just check, it's mate. King is stuck. And so in desperation, people have even played f6 in this position. But at d6 maybe. But okay, this is absolutely crushing. So really nice idea here. Yeah, don't be too greedy grabbing that pawn. So if you don't grab the pawn, what else could you do? You could go for like this kind of idea. You know, if you take here, I'll take here. That's not such a great idea either, it turns out, for black, because if simply bishop b5, we can't afford to take this pawn because takes at d7. So this is a really nice idea. So bishop coming out here, taking this knight, and the d7 square is weak, is the idea. So takes at d7, takes, and you sack the queen, and because our rook is hanging, we have to just get it out with check. And now the whole point of the sequence is knight here. So if we ever go to a dark square, we're going to be losing the queen. So that's not going to be good. But if we ever go to a light square, we can force you onto a dark square with the bishop. So here, bishop here, check, here, bishop takes pawn, check. So now actually you could probably go to a dark square safely. If you go here, you're getting mated with just this. And it's very hard to stop the mate. Having said that, you could probably step back here and you're not dying. Yeah, you are dying immediately because this, and this, and I can't see black surviving this. So there's a very nice queen sack, basically, in this line. So at a3 doesn't really work because of these ideas, this and this. So that's just quite sort of a brief opening digression. Let's get back to the game, which is bishop b5 immediately. And again, queen takes b2 looks like it's winning a pawn, but just knight g to e2. White is castling quickly, and black is too far down in development. So probably white has a slight edge. But it's not terrible. But knight f6 is good. Knight f6 is good. At d5, queen takes b2 is a slight mistake. Knight g2 is good. Bishop d7 takes. So notice this knight is now protecting that weak d7 square. So, but rook b1 is good. And you might ask, well, why doesn't the queen just go to a3 and chill? And here's the problem. I thought this knight was fine. It's doing a good job. The problem, okay, so obviously you can't take with the king. That's the first thing. If you take with the king is getting drawn out, and you're losing the queen. You're actually getting mated in this position with moves like knight here check, bishop here check, knight here check. The brilliant idea is opening up this square, and now this is checkmate. So let's just see that again. So you think you can just go chill on a3. The problem is king takes doesn't work, that's for sure. If you go king back immediately, then obviously bishop straight away. So bishop straight here now. A lovely idea because you've got two knights, and now you've got this mate. So, but why not just take back with the knight? That seems reasonable. And that doesn't, while promising, doesn't work either because of bishop takes pawn. You defend the knight, just double up, and black is lacking defenders. He might come back, just pile up, and there's no real defense here for black. He's giving back the queen. Hi there, apostatlet. Greetings. So we're on game 5 of Bugzilla burpcow recap, catch up stream. So just to explain, burpcow is wise here not to give up the queen. If you try and hold the queen, it's actually game over. So he gives up the queen, which is very wise. And so white's got an edge, but black is still in it. Takes, knight takes, bishop at a5, guarding c7. Here, white probably should have gone here just to gain a tempo. And I think this is, we'll see the same thing happen in the game, but without the tempo gain. So defends, e6, then queen at b7. Okay. rook at b8, and yeah, white's got a really nice move here, which is actually just giving up the queen. You're going to get back stuff. Knight takes c7, king d8, and you've got to be careful. You don't want rook takes queen, so you go pawn here, and the threat is simply to take on the back rank, and the rook can't take the queen because it'll be pinned to the king. And I don't think this is much better at b7. Yeah, this is still, you have to be a little bit more careful here because you can't just go taking this rook, but this is also supposed to be good for white. So interesting idea missed there with queen takes c7. Okay, instead knight d6 check was played. Bishop takes. I have a line here which I wasn't expecting. So queen takes c7, bishop takes, knight takes, king sidesteps, pawn here. Oh yeah, if you just try and grab the knight, you take with the knight check, and takes. Okay, so I just had some long line. But okay, just one way of mating. But that's just going way too much detail. So you take with the knight, then you notice you're threatening queen takes. So that's why he sidesteps. Now they're discovery ideas, but instead you actually just go for this, and you want rook takes pawn. And there's a really neat way of getting it with knight at b8, just deflecting that rook. But okay, knight d6 was played, takes, queen takes rook, so he's getting 2 rooks for the queen. But actually, yeah, actually black can defend the back rank. Knight at c8, completely natural move. Black does end up winning this game. Black is winning here, actually. Black is winning here. So, obviously, white's chance of winning already is with this queen takes c7 move, and white is completely winning. He does this idea, which is very nice, but queen here, and black is actually better. Why is black better? Okay, let's count the material. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a knight is worth the same as a rook. And where black is up 2 pawns, and his king is safe. So black is slightly better here. Unfortunately, he did knight at c8, and now actually white is crushing again. But there's only one winning move, which wasn't found in the game. And that's taking that knight. And it's a really beautiful idea. White is down a truckload of material. He only has 2 knights and 2 rooks. But there's something really neat you can do with 2 knights and 2 rooks. Rook here check. Don't you dare not take it, or that's checkmate. So you have to take it. Knight here check. Or what do you do? Okay, you go here because you want to avoid the mate. The second knight comes here, pushing you here. And then the last piece, checkmate. It's exactly what my pocket's empty. So I've just used up all those pieces, and they just mate. So queen takes knight. What a beautiful idea. And black's best move is to try and do this, which is clearly not good. But it's not mate immediately. And now suddenly white's up all the material. So yeah, really beautiful idea with rook here, knight here, and another rook here. But okay, that was missed. And so after the next move, it's black back in control. Knight at c4. Defends. Rook at b1, defending his back rank, so it seems decent. At a5, knight takes d6, bishop takes d6. Already now, white doesn't have the same tactics that he had earlier. Bishop at c6. So the idea was if you take queen takes knight, but actually taking is not too dangerous because you can just block. And there's no, that bishop is actually doing a great job defending everything. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after not taking the knight, it goes from plus 26 to minus 9, and that's normal for Crazyhouse. I mean, that's the nature of Crazyhouse, even at the highest level. Okay, so black gets his king safe. That's crucial. White wins. White trades off these. Okay, so maybe this was white's last. So castle's an excellent move. Castle was a decent move. Bishop takes d7, knight takes d7, queen b5, knight f6, and maybe this was white's last chance to do something in this game, but we'll see if it was. And that was bishop at h6. I mean, still black is slightly better, just because of the material edge. But bishop at h6, it still could have gone either way this game. You have to take this very seriously. Needless to say, taking is not good. It's just difficult to defend. So if you just do chill moves like this, the problem is this comes. And you've got at g7, and you're already threatening rook at h8. This is like how black could just lose the game very quickly. And there's no defense for rook at h8. So bishop at h6, how do you defend? You could defend very passively with the bishop at h8. It looks really ugly, but it actually works because there are no smothers. White doesn't even have a knight. So bishop at h8 would work. But what I'm going to show you is queen at g6. Queen comes over here. You can afford just to take that bishop. Takes, bishop takes h6. But now you can go knight at f5. Now you can go knight at f5 because there's no queen prepared to snap off that knight. And Apostatlet asks, was bishop at h8 instead of knight at f6 any better? Sorry, so if you take your bishop at h8 here, well, it's going to get traded off straight away with at g7. Takes, and taking here looks like suicide because this will come, and so on. So it's not mate. Yeah, so taking it has to be suicide because a queen comes here, blocks your king's escape. And the idea is bishop at h6, king g8. Oh, there's a very nice idea here. Drawing the king into the corner, queen takes and queen takes. I hadn't even seen that one. That's very beautiful. So yeah, bishop at h8 straight away doesn't work. Knight at f5 is a really good pattern to know for defending this, because your opponent's got these diagonals. You defend with the knight's less useful to attack along the diagonals. But here, just the knight just gets ripped off. Yeah, so the way to defend is now with bishop at h8 or with the queen. I'm just going to show you the queen line. Now you could take, if you want to, takes, knight f5, defending. So if, for example, this, then we just take it. Knight takes g7, bishop takes g7. And with knight, rook, queen, he doesn't have any diagonals anymore. You can just about take here, and he hasn't got any checks. So it's a fine thing that you just about get away with taking here. So taking here is risky, but it's just about okay. So so maybe what's another approach? Instead of taking knight at d3, oh, okay. So black has a really beautiful approach here. It's even stronger, which no one will see. It's knight at d3, very forcing. If you sidestep, what's the problem with sidestepping? The problem with sidestepping is you get a light square attack coming to you at f3. Why can't we just take it? At g2 is coming, and we're dying basically. If king takes g2, then we take the queen, takes back, and at h3, and we're going to have an at here, takes, queen lands here, blocks. If it's not blocked with the rook, queen takes. Should I go through it? Let's just go through it. Queen takes, bishop takes, at h3, drawing you up, king takes h3. I was going to say at g4 here, but apparently this one first is better. And the idea is, oh, that's the way you do it. That's the way you do it. And bishop at g2, getting you in from behind. Okay, so that's much stronger. So after this check, we actually have to run back. And then the move apparently is you just give up the queen. Because that is mate. Okay, I did not see that. And if you step back, king g1, then, well, at g2 is killing, but bishop at e4 is also killing. How to defend this square and this square? Just not possible. There's no defense. You can defend one square, you can't defend both. So you go rook here, just queen takes here, it's checkmate. So all of that is to say that this knight has to be taken. Yeah, bishop at e4, beautiful, because you have double check, double threat. That has to be taken. Now we have a back rank weakness. Okay, just sidestep. Now this back rank weakness is gonna kill us. Why not just take it? Okay, we just promote. Okay, just put another rook down. Black is better here, but it's really tricky. You take the rook, okay, take back, what's the problem? Back rank again. Okay, we'll just defend. Knight at c1, what's the problem? At h3, now h3, what's the idea? Okay, the idea is to go rook takes c1, pick up that knight, then stick that knight on f3 and pick up the queen for free. Okay, that queen's not going to be happy with that. It's going to quickly get to safety. Takes, takes. And white's got a really, really beautiful sneaky move here. It's not black is still better the whole way, but this is a sneaky, sneaky idea. Now, if black just keeps on attacking, h takes g2, oopsie daisies. Rook takes, king h8, sack the rook, and queen at g7 is checkmate. Boom. So white's got to be careful. But okay, easy enough to be careful. Just drop a bishop. Actually, dropping a bishop on d7, not so smart. Because the dangerous idea here is for a pawn to land on g7, for a queen to land on h8, and defended by the bishop, queen takes rook. Putting a bishop here will actually block the defense of this bishop because that bishop will be pinned. So we'll see this in the line we show. We're going to instead put the bishop on d7, but just watch out how, if the bishop had been here, this won't work. If takes here, then we can chill and just take here, because queen at h8 check, king f7. Notice how queen takes f8. If the bishop were here, that would be checkmate. It would be pinned. So quite interesting. Quite a subtle point that bishop here is the correct blocker. Okay, so you take here, rook g1, and okay, as I said, black is winning this whole thing, but it's a very fine thing because king takes looks like suicide, but you're just chilling on e8, and black can't do anything because everything's defended. So this is definitely not the way. If you try to do rook takes bishop, for example, as a nothing move, the problem is win a knight, put the knight on, and draw the king up and checkmate it, is basically the idea. And if the king comes up the other way, that's not helpful either. You lose a rook, you draw the king back. If king takes, obviously, queen at f1 is mate straight away, and if you come out, then bishop here, queen here, and pawn here is mate. So, okay. So, so rook, Apostate let's suggest, what about rook takes knight check, bishop takes rook? Yeah, so what are we going to do with the knight? Knight at c7 check. Sorry, not that. Knight at c7. No, knight at c7 is nifty, because if you take it, we're mated. So king to d8. Yeah, so this is, it looks really hairy, but we're just about safe. Just about all the squares are covered. So okay, this is not realistic. This is real computer lines. But yeah, you're just about safe. And that's all to say that this is just all some crazy idea that you can just about win if you're an engine going here. It's pretty ideas, but it's really not realistic to see this. So in practical play, what people will play in this position, if they can get away with it, would be taking here. And just about get away with everything. Takes, 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 and say white has no pawns. So that would be the way to play it. And if you are really worried, you go bishop at h8, just trying to be really secure. And black's okay. Black basically is up material, so he can slow play it a little bit. So black is fine. But you have to be careful. But okay, what happened in the game, instead of bishop at h6, was bishop at g5. And now black is in control, because he just defends. Okay, loses a pawn. That's just too slow. Black's attack is just faster. There's nothing you can do. And it's all over. Queen here, check. Takes the rook. Black trying to counterattack, but just check again. Tries to block. Takes the other rook. He's trying to defend against queen takes knight, leading to mate soon. But he misses, queen takes the other knight, and rook at f1 checkmate. And both down to seconds at this point. But very high quality play. Like maybe the one move could have been different. Is with 20 seconds on the clock, bishop at h6 instead of bishop at g5, and then it's a game. But here black's attack is really fast, so really well played by burpcow. So he takes that one. So just to recap, burpcow took game 2, and he took game 4, and now he's taking game 5. So he's taking 3 games by the looks of it so far. Okay, so halfway through, burpcow in the lead, 3-2. Hi there, Laneskia. Okay, so now into the second half of this match. Bugzilla is black. What's he going to do? Ah, he has to face his own opening now as black. And so Bugzilla is going to see how. Yeah, I spent a long time thinking about this position. I'm good, Laneskia. So who are you on Lichess? And I spent a long time thinking about this position because the natural move in this position is c6. And white would very gladly bring the bishop back and say, woohoo, I've created a little bit of a weakness on d6. That's the idea of this move. And what's interesting about this position is almost always white has brought his bishop back to d3. Black plays e6. So there's a little bit of a weakness here. Takes, takes, and then white goes, oops, that wasn't a good square for my bishop, and move the bishop again to e2. So almost always that's how the line has gone when people play this. But it's very rarely that white has actually played bishop e2 first. So it saves the tempo. But this is actually quite... I was looking at this because this actually looks not super... I mean, the engine prefers white, obviously. It always does. But this is actually quite interesting for black because takes... Okay, e6. It looks a bit weak, d6, but actually it seems okay, and you'll see why. Takes, takes, and the reason why this is so awkward... Actually, this is not a good opening for black, so I'm going to show you how white deals with it, unfortunately. The reason why it's awkward for white is where to put this knight. If you put it here, it gets taken. If you put it here, it gets taken. And the bishop's just grabbed this square, and the bishop has nowhere else decent to go. And now I say that, I'm thinking, why can't the bishop move here? Here, here. Maybe that's not so bad. Here, here. And so at least white sort of develops, I guess. Knight d7, castles. But this isn't good for white. This isn't good for white. If takes, you've actually got takes. So we're going deep down the rabbit hole, but knight to h3, and why not just go here? Takes, knight takes e5 at the end of that whole line, and you can't take back because of the queen. So white's king is a little bit open, and it's all rather awkward. So what's all this to say? What all this is to say is white has a real problem. So this is not what happened in the game. In the game, as Bugzilla played this is just really interesting because players always play this in response, but I argue they should play this so that when the knight is taken, the bishop is not hit with tempo. e6, takes, knight here, but the problem white always has is he can't easily develop his knight on g1. So what I suggest here, this is probably white's best approach, because I was thinking about this position a lot, is knight c3. Oh, yeah, knight c3, knight d7. Okay, white to play here. Now, definitely, you should always look at forcing moves in any position. And one very forcing move is knight at d6 check. If the opponent is playing king e7, he's straight up losing. So you have to take it. Takes back, castles, and this looks really awkward for black until you realize white doesn't actually have a pawn for e7, so it's not so bad. And if you just put a bishop on, that's not the end of the world. We can just move the queen out the way. Bishop for a rook is a fair trade. White's not attacking our king anytime soon because he has no other pieces. He's lost his dangerous pawn on e5. So this looks scary, but it's actually not a threat to our king. So all of that to say is that, yeah, knight at d6 isn't such a great idea. Okay, so that was one thought I had. Another thought I had, what about going knight at e4 and then developing this knight? It doesn't really work because you can take, and this idea again of just sacking your knight for a pawn and getting in, you'll see. If you take back, takes. Why not bishop takes? The problem is bishop takes at f2 comes, and then knight at e4. So king takes is a bit safer actually. Queen back on the back rank, d6 here, takes here. Yeah, black's doing pretty well here actually. So all of that is just to say that just going e6, takes, knight here, just going knight takes pawn is not actually that great. Why queen at d8? Well, my first reaction in this position is castles, but this square is actually rather weak, so you probably want to get this out and castle kingside, probably. Queen d8 is just an obvious way of... So queen d4, it might actually be stronger than queen d8, if I actually look at the engine now. Queen d8 is just an obvious way of... You're worried about a knight drop here, and so it's just an obvious way of protecting. So I would play queen d8 just because it's safe. Here, you just take it, is the point, and you win, because your attack is faster. King e2, this is already checkmate, by the way. King g1, king d2. I really want to promote to knight, but apparently this is better. Rook at d1 just to try and get this and then promote. Okay, it's sort of what? Yeah. So the point is, black's attack is faster, and that's going to lead to mate if you play it accurately. Is there a difference between queen d8 and queen d7? Oh yeah, queen d7 looks very risky because you're putting your king and queen a knight fork away from each other. So if you put queen d7, there are ideas like go at h6 and then knight f6. So queen d7 looks very risky. Now, we're not talking about a huge difference, but we're talking about Engine sees a 3-point difference. So Engine actually likes queen d4 as the best. Queen d8 is just a very natural defensive move because you're putting your queen next to your king and defending it. And you're keeping an eye on that f6 square. So if ever a knight wants to land there, worst come to worst, you can sack your queen for it. So okay, all of this is just to say that knight takes e4, nah, doesn't really work. Okay, what else? There's a crazy idea. What about queen d2, bishop here, knight here, knight here? Far too slow. This isn't chess, this is Crazyhouse. f3 comes. You know, white's just going to get crushed. So, what is the best move for white here? And after like a lot of consideration, and it's not the engine's move at all at low depth, even at depth 19, 20, it's not seeing this. I reckon knight h3 is actually a really decent move for white in this position, and it's the answer to the problem of how to develop this weird knight. The refutation would be just take the knight, takes, and now notice at f3 is open, knight at g2 is open. The problem is at f3 straight away is we can just go straight away this, takes, queen takes. It's not too bad for white. Knight g2 is more annoying because it's disturbing our king. Knight takes, I analyze king f1 actually in this position. At f3 seems annoying. Actually just knight takes e4 is fine actually here. But if you did this way, takes, takes, hang on, so what am I saying? If I take, oh, I see. If takes, takes, white's got a really interesting move, which is bishop at g5. And the reason for that is he wants to take on f3, but if he takes on f3 straight away, knight here comes, hitting the queen and hitting f3, and black is doing very well indeed. So very important intermezzo, going this one first, and there's no pawn here check because the knight takes, there's no bishop here check because the knight just takes it, and there's queen has to get safe, and then he's going to go queen takes f3 next. But having said all that, I'm not sure bishop takes f3 is the best. I think just simply this is probably better. But the point is, white is actually doing fine here. Even though his king looks ugly, I think white's doing fine here. Although, looking a little deeper with the engine, maybe the immediate knight takes e5 is a concern. Takes, takes. Yeah, it's unclear. Rook at g2, rook g1. The game goes on. The game goes on. f2 is protected. I think this is a really interesting line, and obviously no one's ever played anything like it. So it would be a complete novelty if someone does try and play this as white or as black. As white going bishop e2, it's not unheard of. This position has been seen before, but takes, takes, knight h3 has not been seen before. So already this has only been played once on Lichess, and bishop e3 was played in that position, which doesn't solve the problem of where to put this knight. So knight h3, it looks really sharp, but I think white's okay. So that was all just a little diversion. I thought c6 was a really interesting move in this position. I would play c6 here. But knight d7 was played. So I'm a little bit worried about the e6 square in future, but for now it's all very carefully covered. Takes the knight, takes back, knight at g3 hitting the bishop. So just to say here, if you just sidestep, if you just step back with the bishop, I would be concerned about this move. It's not necessarily the top move, but after takes, takes, how are you getting this bishop out? you'd have to either move this bishop out of the way or you just push this one and push this one. So positionally, this is really, really, really bad for black. Like, it's not completely lost in terms of material and everything, but just positionally, this is disgusting. White has no material in hand, so maybe black can solve his problems, but this looks really disgusting. An immediate play here apparently is takes, and knight at e5. Just blocking up those 2 pawns. Ouch. Okay, so so this move you've got to be careful. So he plays e6. Nice move, nice move. So if you take back, everything is protected. And he's also now developing this bishop, so beautiful. Okay. Knight e2. And I think are suggesting that there are 2 good moves in this position for black, but both are really double-edged. One is trying to provoke bishop takes knight, because then I think bishop takes knight, queen takes, just trying to think. This should be okay for black, but if the black, so what's the point of this move? This is actually very subtle. The point of this move is just to get the bishop off protecting e2. So it's a very, very subtle idea. So you push the bishop back, and you could push again, or you could just say, okay, I've got what I wanted, and now get in on f3. And the idea is we now don't have protection of e2. So this, and bishop here now, threatening check and take the queen. It's a kind of really annoying idea. If you play this I'm going to straight up say that's not a good move, because, I don't know, we get something like add e2 coming in. Black is really doing well in that position. Okay, so that's one idea. Another idea is c6, and you might say, well, why not just keep the bishop guarding e2, but then knight here, bishop back, then f3, takes. The problem, and actually white's got some counter ideas of his own, namely takes, and bishop takes here. So it's really unclear if black is really doing well here because of this neat idea of takes here, and then check, taking f3. Abhijit, hi there. That's okay, Abhijit. Good to see you. So very subtle idea here, just to trying to push that bishop away. So you have to do this in this position here. Try to push this bishop away from guarding e2 and then go at f3. It's a really interesting idea. Maybe it doesn't work entirely because you get this very double-edged idea. And who's winning this? Maybe black is still okay, but okay, it's really complicated. What's another natural move in this position? Another natural move is, hang on a second, something went wrong. So bishop at h, I'm trying to figure out how does that happen. So yeah, so those are the two, actually those are just the 2 moves. a6, try to push the bishop off e2 and then go f3. We'll see why in a second. Because you go queen h4 with the bishop still guarding f3, look what happens. Castles, bishop g6, rook f4. Oh, maybe I didn't analyze this. Okay, queen comes back. But basically the bishop still guard, f3 is a lot less dangerous with the bishop guarding e2. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So white is getting back. White is doing very well here. Castle's queenside. Always risky in Crazyhouse to castle queenside because diagonal attacks on a6, b7. Knight takes here. So white is actually getting good control here. Takes. Exploiting the pin. Bishop here. And very nice move here from white. Saying, go on then. Take my queen. Because obviously if you take the queen, you've got some serious back rank issues. And you've only got a queen blocker, so you've got some like rook here, check, takes queen coming. So obviously that's not good. The extent to which it's not good is it's even a good move for white just to do this. Takes, rook here, bishop takes pawn. Even this is good for white. That's how bad black is at the moment. But instead, white did something even better, which is at d6. Takes, rook takes, knight takes, queen takes. Already there's a forced mate at d7, king takes. You're taking the queen with check. Queen takes d6 with check. Actually, there's something even stronger than taking it with check, which is rook here check. If here, just rook here check. And then you're taking the queen with check. If step back, taking the queen with check, and then we've only got a queen in hand, but that's enough. Sack here. If you go here, we can just take it and queen here checkmate. So you better take that, but then queen here and knight here checkmate. So, okay, something similar happened in the game. Queen takes d6 check, takes, rook here check. White just takes, threatening mate on d7, blocks, check, takes the piece anyway, threatening mate on b7. I think I'll just take that as well. Threatening mate here. You can't even take this rook, because I just go queen here and queen slides across. So defense here, I think I'll just... okay, so he just does this, takes it with the rook, brings another queen in and delivers checkmate. So, crushing win from white. What was black's last opportunity? I think this a6 or c6 idea was interesting, probably. That was probably black's last really good. So after this, white's a bit too comfortable, and black's wasting tempi. Okay, so that was game 6. So for Abhijit, who's just joined, we're looking at the series that no one saw live, because it was at 5 a.m. Icelandic time, or UTC. And it was Bugzilla against burpcow, and I think I'm right in saying Bugzilla has now leveled it up at 3-3 after 6 games. And right at the beginning of the stream, as an introduction, I just showed a couple of positions from zyxon blitzbullet, where zyxon, Swedish Bughouse player, took down blitzbullet very impressively. Yep, Australian times are tough with Bugzilla and Jan. So what's going to happen this game? This game, Bugzilla takes the knight on f6, so we have a slightly different opening here. And this is a really beautiful play from Bugzilla. Look at that pressure on d5. 2 knights hitting d5. Defends. A third knight hitting d5. What does black do? Nice move. Pins one of the knights. And also develops his piece. What does white do? Simple development at a3. Nice, trying to win that piece, so if takes, takes. But the bishop on c1 is quite good, so if takes, bishop takes. White wisely gets out the way, so notice now this pawn is hanging. Takes, okay, obviously you can't take it because black is queening, so takes back, pawn here. Yeah, I can't ignore it. I can't ignore that threat, so you take it, okay, give up the piece. Notice you can't take this way because the dark squares are compromised, and after this, the light squares are also completely collapsing. The bishop moves are just going to come in. You're going to drop a pawn on e6. This is really beautiful for white. So burpcow does his best. He goes bishop takes a3. f5 comes anyway. So he could have taken this pawn, but no, he's going to increase the pressure. So the idea is to take here, or if the bishop moves back, just to drop a pawn on e6. Okay, black gives back the piece. Takes, takes, and very nice move. Just rips off this pawn, takes back, and gets that pawn on e6. So this is really wonderful play from Bugzilla. Just I can't see anything burpcow really did wrong. It's like game 1. Just absolute. I mean, what does he do? He's just giving up. He's giving back the queen. There's still a pin. Rook here check. Bishop at b8. Just grabs an extra pawn. Black only has pawns in hand, and he is utterly crushed. Bishop takes knight, and pawn here is coming. Black resigns. So with that, Bugzilla takes the lead in the match, 4-3. Going into game 8. Now, unfortunately, game 8 is going to be a complicated game. Game 9 and 10 will be quite easy to analyze. Game 8, we're going to take our time with this one. Okay, so we saw this, as I said in game 2. Maybe pawn takes pawn is slightly better with ideas of get a pawn on h6, but he's been playing this all game and getting good results because the knight's kind of awkward and has nowhere to go to. If it ever goes here, bishop takes, opens up a weakness here. This is quite nice. But bishop here, pawn here, bishop backs off, castles. Okay, so that knight, what does that knight do? So what he does is takes here, and pawn takes pawn. I guess, so this is an interesting situation. Do you take with the pawn, or do you take with the knight? Yeah, the last game, dream position from white, indeed. And if you look back in game 1, that also was amazing. And I'm just going to drop the study link as well in case people want to watch within the study. This is an interesting question. So on the face of it, this knight looks a lot better than this knight. So it's very tempting to do what happened in the game, which is take with the pawn, because you're hoping that white takes your knight and then you take his knight. This is a dream for black. That's what you want. The problem is that white actually probably doesn't. So what happened in the game was white went desperado with this knight and then took that knight, which is still okay for black. Probably what he could have done instead was knight g3, so he saves the knight completely. Now this knight is hanging and then this pawn is hanging. So that's kind of awkward. When you can't defend counterattack, so counterattack. I wonder, yeah, maybe knight e1 even, but maybe that's a bit too passive because then black goes on the attack, and black's got too many attackers. So probably takes the knight, queen takes, still keeping an eye on this pawn. If pawn here, queen h5, still threatening to take this pawn. Knight at f6 defends the pawn. Queen g5. So okay, this would be feels like black's doing okay actually. h6 is tempting, but actually white would be doing okay with actually sacking the queen for a pawn, surprisingly. Getting some pieces. The point of getting the pieces is if you just do this, knight at f5 is annoying. If you try and defend, takes, bishop takes, pawn here. Okay, so white is down a lot of material, but that black king is very, very open. So white should actually be winning this position. So, okay, this is all to say that knight g3 was very interesting. Knight g3 is very interesting. That's an attempt to refute it, and then you would have to take the knight and lose this knight. And so, is white doing okay here? It will require some deep analysis to really see if he's doing okay. So the alternative for black, though, was knight takes d5, and this also seems pretty decent for black, to the point where the engine is suggesting even giving up a piece for a pawn and going at h6. And because white's attacking first, maybe white's okay. Again, very unclear position, but it feels like black is okay. But okay, so what happened in the game was in fact a desperado move. So both knights are hanging, so white decided, let's go desperado on my knight and then take back the knight here. For some reason, queen takes d6 is stronger. And then e4, I'm looking to go at h3. Why is that? So bishop takes, maybe the d5 takes. So you don't want to take here, why not? Because at h6 comes. So it's a race of who attacks first. But this is the problem with this position. And black should probably just go at h3 and, no, sorry. that's not right. Probably should go e4 and then at h3 is the idea. So e4 if knight here, then at f3. Okay, so it's a kind of race of who attacks first, and apparently queen takes knight is better. Oh, I know why queen takes knight is better. The reason why queen takes knight is better is because then the queen looks at h6. So pawn at h6 is not nearly the threat it was. So the queen gives coverage. It protects the pawn, but it also protects h6. That's the reason. But okay, bishop takes was played, takes here, e4, so knight g5, this has all happened in the game. f3, takes is a mistake. So this is a position you're happy to give away a knight. Black is still better, but taking with the pawn, and now black is doing very well indeed. And black found the move in the game, which is simply give up your queen for 2 pieces. And don't even take the piece immediately. First, stick his opponent king on g2, then take it. So he can't fix the position. He needs another move to fix the position. At d7 was played, just trying to shut off this bishop. And here, shocking miss, frankly, from Bugzilla. It's a mate in 3. And it's so simple, I won't even ask people. Knight at h4, check. The bishop covers this square, the knight covers this square. King comes back, knight here, check, and pawn, bishop checkmate. So a simple mate in 3 missed. But it's okay. He's still completely winning. He just went bishop h3 instead. King g1, knight at e5. So he's threatening knight takes and at g2 checkmate. At e2. But suddenly he has to be careful. My goodness. Yeah, this is the game I was referring to right at the beginning of the stream, because I showed you a puzzle at the beginning of the stream. Zyxon mating blitzbullet. So black is crushing this game, but he gives a chance here. So you have to threaten mate every move. So bishop takes rook, for example, would threaten mate. Because if you did something like pawn takes bishop, no, that's not what I wanted to say. If you did a move like queen takes, rather, then takes here. No, what do I want to say here? Bishop takes rook. Why is this threatening mate? Oh yes, okay, I got it. It's threatening mate because you want to go knight h3, rook at g1. So you can't ignore this bishop. So you could do pawn takes bishop guarding here, but notice this is a threat. Knight at h3, rook at g1. So it's a threat that can't be ignored. Queen takes f1 is a good try, but the problem is takes here, and now the threat is pawn at g2, and if you try and counterattack, just rook h1 and win the queen with check, and this is going to be enough to, yeah, not enough to mate, but you pick up another pawn, and the idea is this, and then this is mating. So, and notice this queen is also protecting against mating attacks. There is a mating threat with rook at h8 at g7. Again, the queen is covering the knight checks, so everything is secure. But okay, all of this is to say that bishop takes f1 was very strong because it comes with threats. So let's just go through this again. Takes here, at f6, rook at h1, takes, king takes, queen here, bishop takes. I think I go even deeper into this line. Rook g1, beautiful move. Threatening queen takes h2. So if you go rook takes knight, queen takes h2. If you block the diagonal, queen takes h2. How to defend? Simple. Defend h2. It's the only way. Black could just defend, and he's slightly better. When I said defense is now the best course of action, I meant for black, not for white. So why is defense the best course of action? Knight e4 is seriously risky, going for some mating idea, but it's very double-edged. It's double-edged because white's got a really beautiful response, which is bishop at d4, both defending f2 and looking to get a rook on the back rank and takes g7. So if you did nothing, this comes. Takes, takes, rook on the back rank, takes, knight here, takes, takes, takes. If king takes, queen at g7 is mate, so you step back, but then just take everything. Okay, so that's just a long line just to say we've got to be really careful of that bishop. Bishop is a dangerous piece. So that's a good move from white in this line if you do nothing. And if you defend, then, okay, this is just an unclear position. And I was just bishop on the back rank. Maybe black's still doing okay. But oh my goodness, that doesn't work, does it? Maybe he's not doing okay. Yeah, knight takes h6 is a bad move. So you have to be really careful. That's the point of this. Knight takes h6 is a bad move because of this. If you take the rook, actually this is really pretty. If you take the rook, queen at g5, rook here, queen takes knight. And the problem with this is if you take with the king, obviously you're stopped from running back. So that's no good. If you take with the rook, that's no good because you're just mated on. Yeah, you're just mated with the queen on g7. And if you just step back, then he can just give up the queen and then put that knight on and checkmate you. Okay, so you've given up two queens, but even the rook's mate. So this is all to say that you can't take that rook, you have to sidestep. And then white is crushing with simple moves like queen at g5, hitting both knights, and threatening rook takes pawn and queen at g7 checkmate, stuff like this. Okay, so really hard, a black can't defend. So all of this is to say that the best course of action is to defend in this position. So this and this. But okay, so going all the way back. So the point is that bishop takes f1 is great because it comes with mate threats. Oh, thanks so much for the subscription, Abhijit. Really appreciate it. But what was played instead was e takes f3, and it turns out it's not quite fast enough because you might want a knight on f3. So suddenly, actually, white is doing okay. f6, brilliant move from burpcow. There are only two good moves in this position for white, f6 and h6. Why are they good? Because both of them threaten a knight on the other square, which can't be taken, or queen at g7 is checkmate. So h6, even h6 works, because the threat is knight at f6. If you take it, you're mated. If you sidestep, takes and swing back. So f6 also, brilliant move. So we have to defend h6 or g7. Knight g4, amazing move from Bugzilla also, but he's toast in this position. He's suddenly toast, and white's got to be careful. Can't just go straight away, because otherwise there's a mate threat. Oops. Okay, so obviously burpcow spots that, and this is a really nice move. Knight at e7. If you sidestep, this comes with check, and you're getting mated. Very easy. Here, check, king takes, and new knight on f5, hitting here, hitting here. King could come to f6, queen at g7, king here, and the classic no. How do we make this? Yeah, I didn't see it. Queen takes d5, checkmate. Bring a new piece in. So yeah, so it's obvious you have to take it. But notice, if you take it, there isn't a mate threat here. So there's a move burpcow missed, which would have completely killed Bugzilla, which is now take g7. Now there isn't a mate threat. And you can try and defend with the knight, but then takes, promote to queen. There's no mate threat against you. Black only has pawns in hand. What's he doing? He's just dead. If you take with the knight, this is a simple mate. if you take with the king, you're mated in 1. So you can't just do something like at g7 to defend, but what do you do to defend? a6, no, a6 doesn't work. So a6 is like do nothing. Do nothing doesn't work because you just try and do the same mate idea. Queen at f6. Queen at f6 is going for rook at g7, I guess. Okay, now this mate works. Oh no, it doesn't, because the knight's protecting g8. So you grab the knight, and then if you take the queen, rook at g8. Okay, anyway, all of this is just to say that white is crushing. There's really no defense. Black doesn't have the pieces to defend and doesn't have a mating attack anymore. So yeah, burpcow misses this. Very simple way of winning. But okay, he does this, which is still good, but he has to be accurate now. Takes, takes, rook takes, queen at e7. Brilliant move from burpcow, because he's hitting the knight and he's hitting the rook. Knight at g6, defending the rook, but not defending the knight, so burpcow takes the knight. Logical, but also losing. And now this is actually the key position. Abhijit says, game 8, super complex, hard to follow. Hopefully I'm explaining it, but if I'm not, maybe I'll do a quick recap. This is the real key position. Maybe I flip the board. White to play and mate. Okay, so queen takes rook is the winning move. Obviously you can't take with the knight, because otherwise knight here check, and rook here checkmate. So you have to bring your king out. And now we get the same position as we saw, the same kind of idea as we saw in zyxon blitzbullet. So for those who weren't with us at the very beginning of the stream, I showed you this position here, where zyxon sneakily put a bishop on c5, and white just needed to defend for one move, f2, but he went straight in for the attack at c7, and he missed this idea. Knight takes. If king g1, there's a double check and a smothered mate, so you have to take it. And this is the key move blitzbullet missed. Rook at g1 takes. Do you take the rook and draw the king out? No. You seal him in, then you take. Then you put the rook you just took down on g1, checkmate. Now we're going to see the same pattern in the current game, in game 8. So, just flip the board here. We're going to just look just temporarily from burpcow's perspective. Take the rook. If you take with the knight, knight here and rook here is mates. So you take with the king. Now we don't have a queen. We'd love to have a queen here. We don't have it just yet, but hang on a second. Bishop here check, keeps the king on the back rank, blocks. Rook here check. Notice he can't just do this, because that's checkmate. So he has to put the queen down. So now we win. It would be very tempting to take the queen straight away, but we do something very subtle. We drop a rook on h8 first, and black has no blockers. If we took the queen first, he would have a blocker. So he has to take that rook with the knight. And why is that a big deal? Is now this knight is no longer guarding e7. So now we have the ingredients for a back ranker. Takes, bishop takes. Again, it would be very tempting just to go bishop takes pawn and draw the king out. And to be honest, that does work. But there's something much more beautiful. Knight at d7 to try and expose a back rank weakness. If you go here, it's just checkmate in 1. So he has to take it. Now his back rank is open. Check, and this pawn is no longer defended by the knight. So block, takes the rook, and checkmate. Okay, you say, but he didn't have to block with the rook. He could have blocked with the knight. He could have, but then queen takes, queen here is checkmate. So black is done for. either way. So just to play through that whole sequence again, it's a mate in, the engine doesn't even see it at this point. Yeah, it does. Mate in 10. It's a mate in 10. But it's very thematic. So you don't take there, you go takes, takes. Keep the king sealed on the back rank. Here, here to deflect the knight. Then you take the queen. Then you draw the bishop out from the back rank, so you've got back rank control again. Boom, boom, boom. So that's how burpcow could have won. Unfortunately, he did what was natural to do, which is to grab the piece. But now black is in control, and Bugzilla made no mistakes. He took the rook, it's the correct thing to do. He put a pawn on g2, threatening rook at h1 checkmate. That's nasty. Nice t7. Nice try, because if you take with the knight, then there's queen takes g7, king takes, knight at h5. If you step down, you're actually getting mated as follows. It's not completely obvious. You draw the king into the corner. You put a pawn on g7. You pick up the other rook. And now the back rank is weak, and you get your mate. So, pretty nifty. You can't go down, because otherwise rook here, and you pick up another rook, and there's no protection on the back rank. So king could come up to here, but then knight f4 check. If you're going to step back, we're just going to go here, check again. If you ever go to here, you're actually in trouble, because I'm thinking bishop at g7, but that's not the move, because knight covers this square. The move is actually queen c1 to save this square. Pawn at e3. Oh no. Yeah, apparently this is just mating for white. Knight takes e3, knight takes e3, bishop at g7, and then the knight's, yeah, the knight's no longer. Anyway, this is a long mate, but white gets mate here. So the point of the queen here is just to pick up another blocker. Why would you want to do that? Hasn't he got everything he needs? Hang on a second, I don't understand this at all. Why not pawn here? Queen takes g5, king takes, bishop at f4, king takes knight. This square is covered, so we seem like we're safe, but we're not, because rook g5, pawn here, rook here, and takes. Okay, so crazy stuff, but the point is white would get a lot of counterplay. If black takes with the knight, white gets a lot of counterplay, and actually it's a draw. But Bugzilla's not going to make a mistake now. King h8, takes the knight. So it's just desperation here from white. Rook here, he's hoping for rook takes, so you've got to smother, so king takes. Knight here, check. They're no more heavy, so he just goes back in the corner. Nothing. White has nothing. Just desperation. The white's just throwing checks. So, beautiful play from Bugzilla, sealing it, but really, burpcow had it on his racket with queen takes f8. And the very beautiful rook at h8, that's hard to find, yeah. And okay, there are other ways of finishing. There are probably other ways of finishing it, to be fair. Like even in this position, probably just taking the queen, bishop takes. Yeah, there are probably other ways of finishing it, but this is just so beautiful, so beautiful. Okay, so that's game 8. Game 9 and 10 are actually quite boring. So game 8, yeah, that was definitely a highlight. Game 9 and 10 were quite boring. I'll show you why. Game 9, we saw this sort of position. Takes, takes, little tactic here. Takes the knight, bishop takes bishop is coming. Queen takes queen, rook takes queen. White is actually doing very well here, unfortunately, because of knight f6. Takes, takes, king e7. So this is not actually any good for black. It didn't help that black mouse slipped and played bishop c6 instead. That doesn't help, because just takes, takes, and here. If you step up, then this comes, and that's checkmate. If you don't step up, you take with the queen. Do you take back? No, no checks. I mean, actually there are checks. So queen takes d7 is also mating. But there's a much more beautiful mate. The king and queen are on the same colour. They're a knight check apart. Much more beautiful mate. Boom. But I feel like it was a mouse slip, but actually everything else was losing also. And that's a shame, because it looks like this tactic works, right? Takes, bishop takes bishop. It looks good. If there's a trade of queens, it looks like, wait a second, isn't black got so many threats with queen at c1, queen at e1? But no, it turns out that this is actually really not good for black. So this is, yeah, something to be careful about. If you just take here, the problem is queen at c7 block. If you block with this, queen takes d6 is checkmate. So you have to block with the queen, but then there's queen takes queen, rook takes queen, queen here is checkmate. So, okay, this is just all very awkward. So you can't take with the pawn, so you have to take with the rook, but then there's takes, this square is kind of not defended, but actually apparently this is even better. Okay, so it's not clear, but this is mating apparently. So for example, if you just try and run knight g4, you want to force the king here, and go knight here. So you want to get a pawn here, basically. So if here, you're going to go bishop h6, and if step back, knight f6, and if he steps forward, rook g5. That's the kind of setup you want. King f5 is a bit more challenging, but just rook at g5 draws the king even further forward towards your pawns, and this should be fairly straightforward now. So knight f6, the rook's already defended, king d4, knight f3. So notice, I love this setup with the two knights 3 apart, because you just know without thinking that they control a lot of squares when your knights are 3 apart like this. This is the power pose for knights. And of course the queen was cutting off the c-file. So yeah, you could defend with the bishop or something, but this doesn't help much either, because apparently then there's knight at g8. Takes, king e8, and the rook mates. So okay, so it turns out black was lost anyway without the mouse slip. So that's something to be wary of. It seems like a good tactic. In standard chess, it's a really nice tactic to do this and this. It doesn't always work. The open file in this position actually benefits white. But okay, that's the painful mouse slip, regardless. But white was going to win that anyway. Bugzilla very strong, and black was also game 10 was also a crush from black. Again, we have a wolf defense. Lots of pressure on this pawn. Goes straight in with at h3. What's the idea? Just takes h3, takes the pawn, and here's the idea. Why can't you just take, and win a pawn? Oops, 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 oops. You just lose the whole queen. Ouch. So that was the point of the h3 move. The h3 move, it looks like you're attacking g2. Well, you are, because you're trying to free up f3. So the h3 move is actually attacking the center. Isn't that amazing? The h3 move is actually attacking the e5 pawn. So he takes it, and now you can take the center. Brilliant. Brilliant play from Bugzilla. He grabs here, he brings the other knight hitting f3, puts another knight on f3. Very simple chess from Bugzilla. King takes, puts a pawn on f3, grabs another diagonal piece, puts a bishop on g2, threatening rook h1 checkmate. God, how do you do? What do you do against this? King takes, queen takes d3, bishop here, trying to get some safety on f3, and he just mated from behind. So, yeah, wonderful crush to finish. So that was 4 straight games to finish from Bugzilla. So Bugzilla against burpcow. Huh. It says 6-4. Did I miscount? Let's just view it. So, yeah, let's just view. Burpcow won game 2 and game 4 and game 5 and game 6. Oh. Oh, so burpcow won game 6 as well. Okay. So I see. So burpcow was 4-2 up. So I'm trying to remember this game. Oh yeah, burpcow was white. Oh yeah, this was a brilliant game. Just opening up that file and absolute crush. Getting this, just taking all the pieces. He had a mate, but he just took all the pieces. So Bugzilla was 4-2 down, but actually ended up winning 6-4. That's it. That's the end of the stream. Thanks, Apostatlet. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Abhijit. Thanks also people who joined earlier in the stream, Laneskia and Zaraza and Chemical Chess and Igloo Kid and Marlon. That's it. What's the highlight? Maybe I'd say the theme of the stream, as it were, is that game 8. And the one thing probably to take away from the stream, yeah, this idea of a bishop and a heavy on the back rank, especially a bishop and a queen on the back rank, very powerful, very powerful. Because we began the stream with that and we ended the stream with game 8 with that. So that's the one thing to take away from this. Thanks everyone for watching. If there's someone you want me to raid, let me know. I'll just quickly check if anyone I know is streaming. Quick look. I'm going to raid, Nakamura's got lots of followers, so I'm going to raid WGM Adriana, who sometimes plays Crazyhouse. So, but I think she's doing chess today, so I'm going to send you over to her, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your Friday night and weekend. And thanks so much for joining me, and yeah, in accompanying me as we look through these games. Bye, guys. Let's raid.